Lorcan O'Brien is the whole school director of sport at Grammar School of Leeds, and Kevin Shattock is the head of athletic development at Grammar School of Leeds, and also a professional doctorate student here at Leeds Beckett. They're going to present on long-term athletic development at Grammar School of Leeds, people not process. So I'll hand over to Lorcan. Thank you very much.
Click my stopwatch because for those, not many people know me, but I promised Kev I'd do 8.5 minutes and then pass over to the expert who's much better than I am. Thank you, Kev. Thank you, Fionn. Great to be here. Imposter syndrome flowing from a body after that presentation from Kev. And I think we want to give you a snapshot into what we do at GSAL. Kev and Sam will do a better job, but the purpose of me speaking, I guess, is just to inform you a bit about what are the beliefs and the opinions which have formed our skeleton and a bit of our map. And they stem from my own, I guess, background, my own growing up as a young child, how I became a PE teacher, and my role as director of sports. And I guess over the last, since I've been teaching in the UK since 2003, and I'm a PE teacher at heart before I'm a director of sports. And I think since I've been teaching at various schools and transitioned from school to school, there's been just a colossal investment in sport. There's been a colossal investment in people who have specialist skill sets. There's been a huge investment in pitches and facilities. And I've been privileged, and one of the great jobs of the US, you get to travel and do fixtures. You get to go around to schools, and from down south where I spent most of my career to the last 2 years up here, you just get to see the growth, and it's been huge. And I think in the last sort of 20 years, it's been big spend, specialist coaches, lots of prehab and rehab, which is justifying threat. There's been just an onslaught of energy into this field. And sometimes I feel it's not misplaced and it's not always misguided. I'm very conscious of some great practitioners and schools in the room doing a wonderful job. But it doesn't motivate. And it doesn't inspire kids. And we're in the business of kids. Our job really in schools, for me, is to drive, motivate, and inspire kids. And our job is youth development. And we've seen a growth in this. Now, this is wonderful. And lots of schools have great resources, but I just feel in the last 20 years there's been a huge growth. And I sometimes feel we've forgotten that being in the corridors, being on the sports field, making connections, and linking the person to the child is what's going to inspire and motivate kids. And I sometimes feel that's a bit lost. So let's help drive part of what we do, because we want to create great environments, to have great people, to connect and do a wonderful job. I've picked a really extreme example of these two young girls. And I guess one of the things I'd love to discuss at the round table is just to talk about the high performance and the healthy performance. And I think what we're trying to do is not move away from high performance, but establish, number one, a healthy performance environment. And I think you've got Kev's continuum there of you've got participation at one end, and you've got high performance the other end. And I think for a child to perceive that, sometimes they go, well, we're the shit kids at one end, and then we're the really good kids at the far end. We've got really able and really good kids this side, and over here we're not that great. And I think that's dangerous. And I think I'm a PE teacher, and we've got S&C coaches and heads of athletic development. We've got wonderful practitioners in school. We have specialist coaches, but we still have to make sure that the job we do is about instilling a culture of fitness and health, and finding some medium between what is participation and what is high performance. And our drive really is about healthy. We want to just create healthy environments. The reason this is here, my daughter, bless her, she has her mum's genes, thankfully. And from the age of 4, she's 10 now, from the age of 4 to 9, she was involved in a high performance gymnastics program. And we transitioned from one club down south to a club up here. And for those who aren't involved in gym, as a parent, you hand your child over, they close the gates, and you leave for 4 hours. And she was 9 doing 19 hours a week in a high performance centre. So I just popped into Leeds City Gym Club one day and said, how is this working? Like, what is a high performance centre? How does it work? How do you manage it? And my heart was warmed. And I said, look, here's what we do. Your daughter's in this group, and here's why. And they are of different age, different skill, different range, on different pathways, on different athletic development models. And I said, we believe this group will get the best out of each other. And we've looked at all the coaches we have, and this girl will coach this group because she's going to connect the best, and she's going to get the I was sort of warned by that. And I think sometimes we get, I mean, these kids were in school doing GCSEs when they went through the pathway, the athletic development model continuum. It's an extreme example because there's medals, there's money involved in that. I sometimes feel we can get lost between delivering specialist stuff, which is great, and understanding a culture of high performance, and then maybe forgetting, that we're in a school and our job is to connect and motivate and thrive and build a culture of high performance, healthy performance before high. Really lucky to get to hear her speak. and a couple of conferences over the last 3 or 4 years, and it links to some of the stuff that Kev talks about and that Sue believes in. And long story short, and the why of this here is that in the last part of her book, she talks about the 3 C's, which is the long win. So connection, collaboration, and constant learning. And my take from those things is a culture of healthy environments. Yes, we can use metrics. Yes, we can use data. Yes, we have to make informed decisions, but I think sometimes there's an overemphasis on that. And we lose the fact that bottom line, while I have a reasonably big job, which is sometimes overwhelming, and we have facilities and budgets and wonderful staff, I am a PE teacher at heart. And if you're not a PE teacher in a school, you're still involved in driving, motivating, connecting with kids, and making sure that we understand what we're meant to be doing. So it's about healthy environments for us. Kev's put some stuff up there. We're trying, and he's much better at this than me, and so is Sam. And we want to try and make informed decisions. So Kev will send me a paper and I'll read it and get confused most of the time. But we want to make informed decisions. And I think the research coming out for schools is that after 20 years of millions of pounds of investment in schools, particularly in my area, which is the independent sector, we have obese kids, we have unfit kids, we haven't defined physical literacy, there are less kids playing school sport than ever, we have major problems with certain sports, but the sector, my sector, which I'm a part of, has had the most funding impact ever. And I think something's wrong there. I'm not quite sure how to fix it, so it's great to have these discussions today. We're delighted to be here. So we're trying as much as possible. I think Ali, News for Trust is brilliant. Ofsted put something out in the last 3 or 4 weeks. Ofsted, a long paper about the importance of PE schools. That was just last week. We can go through the last year. It's countless. You don't have to look far to find them. And finally, I'm on 7 minutes. Look at that, Kev. Unbelievable. And finally, I guess I'm delighted to be here, and I can't wait to get that discussion going, because I think unless we collaborate and work together, I think we're going to struggle. I think we'll work in silos, and I think it's dangerous. Because there are too many unfit kids. GSAL do a lot of great stuff, and I'm very privileged to be part of the school. We do a lot of good stuff, and we do a lot of shit stuff, which we're going to put right. So we're not perfect role models, but we've got good people in the right environment trying to create it. And this is Tom Crean, and he had a privileged position. And Tom Crean was an Irishman from County Kerry, which is a really Republican part of the world, who in the early 1900s emigrated to the UK, and then joined the British Navy. And for an Irishman in those times, that was unheard of. He told nobody, and 15, 20 years later, he was on the Shackleton journey. And this was him. He was about animals, he was about connecting, he was about looking after. He was a man in a privileged position he was looked up to. And I think we have that. Because in the room, there's directors of sport, there's S&C coaches who are specialists, there's PE teachers, there's academics. I think unless we come together and we look at some of those bridges to build, I think we'll continue to struggle. So those opinions and beliefs have formed what we're trying to do with GSAL. And I'll pass you over to someone who's much more knowledgeable than me, who's Kev, who's doing a great job. So Kev, over to you.
Forgive me if I stand behind the bench. I have a shocking cycling time, so I prefer you to focus on the slides rather than the horrendous lines I have on my legs. For those that have never seen me present before, I love storytelling, love narrative, I love analogy learning. So I'm possibly not going to give you any answers in the next 20 minutes. I would prefer you to walk away from this talk with more questions. Because I can talk about the context of GSAL, but it won't apply to anyone else in this room. The resources we have will be different from your context. The staff we have available will be different. So I want to try and prompt some themes that will leave you thinking about your own context and how you can apply them. I'm sure this is a picture that we're all familiar with. For those that have been to an optician, sit there, in a very soothing voice, the doctor says, lens 1, lens 2. Which one's clearer? Lens 1, lens 2. And does that over a series of lenses until you get a very sharp, crisp picture. And that is the lens for you. You are going to hear various pieces of knowledge, information, and expertise today. And the lens that you choose to look at it through will define whether that is a crisp and sharp picture or whether it blurs the image. And I'm not saying sharp and clear is right, blur is wrong. It's up to you to interpret that. Okay? So the first concept I want to throw at you is, what lens are you using? For me, as head of athletics development at GSAL, I have 3 main strands to my role. Number 1 is the educational curriculum, so the GCSE and the A-level part of school life. How do I impact that, and what lens do I use from an academic, educational point of view to improve athleticism? Kev talked about health and fitness. How do we create, and what lens do I use to create a healthy population within school? And then the performance that most of us will recognise as traditional S&C. Those athletes within our environment that are in national governing body pathways, that are playing at first team level, or within professional academies. What lens am I using to develop them? Okay. Key coaching concept, and those that know Bob Muir will recognise this, the 5 W's. What works for who, in what context, and why? So what lens are you using? It's the first concept for you to reflect upon today. The second one, I want you to imagine it's 10 years' time. You are inviting the class of 2023 back to a sportsman's dinner, sportsperson's dinner, I apologise, sportsperson's dinner, back to your school as an alumni sports dinner, possibly raising some money for the tour that you have coming up. You've got the table set out, yeah, nice clean glasses, the cutlery is shining, the linen is nice and white on the tables. During that meal, there will be discussions that take place, and hopefully you will interact with those athletes from 10 years ago or this year. What will those athletes, what will those young people, and not so young people in 10 years' time, what would they say about your program? What would they say about the provision you gave to them in relation to PE? It's that dinner party analogy. You're talking about life. You're talking about their journey. General sweeping statement coming up. I would suggest they're not going to talk about technique and tactics. They're going to talk about how you made them feel. They're going to talk about relationships. They're going to talk about psychosocial. So those dinner party conversations, what are your young people that you have now going to say about your program in 10 years' time when you invite them back for a sports dinner, to possibly give a talk to the current year group like we are now? So it's all about perspective. Some of you may have heard of this parable, 6 blind men and the elephant. So if I blindfold you and I take you to a different part of the elephant, sorry, whatever you touch will give you a sense of what you are trying to work out. So if I went to the elephant with a blindfold on and I touched the ear, I might think it was a big fan. If I touched its trunk, I might think it's a roe. So again, the lens or the perspective that you take within your school, within your environment, will dictate. Think about your staff team, and especially for the directors of sport within the room. Each different staff member will have a different perspective where they're coming from. If you're head of football, your viewpoint is going to be different from me as head of athletic development. My viewpoint is going to be different from the head of hockey. So can you recognise the different viewpoints you have within your staff team, what they contribute, and how do they align for your overall policy? So as an S&C coach, I could argue very simply, my viewpoint is to coach athletes or individuals to flex and extend their joints using force and or velocity to improve performance. But if you look at the picture at the bottom left, the different perspective other people might hear. And for the S&C guys in the room, this might make you laugh when your head coach says to you, we're just not fit enough. We need to be fitter. We need to be tougher. That's probably a line that we've all heard. But what does that actually mean? And those are the perspectives that might come up and what we're talking about. So again, how are we aligning towards people? How are we focusing what we're talking about to that individual? Sport, like most things to do with human development, is characterised by a range of different focuses. And Kev started the day talking about the 4 elements that athleticism, long-term athlete development is defined by now. For me, I'm taking a biopsychosocial approach. So the physical matters, of course it does. That's why most get involved with PE, physical education. But actually, the person in front of you, those young people in front of you, the psychosocial and their experience probably combines more to drive that physical element. So which pieces of the jigsaw puzzle? So if you think about a young person that you were working with yesterday, think about the scenario. And think about the different ways that you could apply biopsychosocial. Was it purely about the physical that you were working with? Or was it about motivation? Was it about confidence? Was it about your relationship? Was it about building social bonds? So at GSAL, we've got a big tour coming up to South Africa. And on a Wednesday afternoon, they have tour training. And we're trying to create the social bonds within that team, so when they're away on tour and it gets hard, they can recognise the people that were there with them during the hard times, during those hard fitness sessions. Okay? Because again, that's a picture we all recognise. We all see and we all subscribe to. Anytime there's an Olympics, a World Cup, a major championships, you will hear about that team going away, spending a day with the Army and the Marines or the Air Force. And they're not doing it to get fitter. They're already at an elite level. So why are they spending a day doing that? One of the first jobs I ever had was in the RAF as a physical training instructor. And we call this adventure training. So we go and ski, rock climb, ice climb, and walk. And one of the analogies we were taught or asked is, how many kayakers does it take to win a war? The obvious answer is none. But why does HM Forces spend millions of pounds every year taking soldiers, airmen and sailors out into the wilderness? It's about the characteristics and the transferable skills that allow them to work in some of the harshest environments. So think about your own practice. What transferable skills are you developing and trying to instill in the young people that will serve them in 5, 10, 15 years' time? Because again, think about that dinner party analogy. They will talk about their sport and they'll talk about memorable fixtures or results that they had. But I guarantee they will talk about the experience. They will talk about the people that they were with at the time. So trying to put that in real life. What do you see in this picture? 20, 30 seconds just to reflect. What do you see in that picture? Hopefully, some of these words crossed your mind. So from a physical point of view, demonstration, technical cues, instruction, load management. But again, you might have looked at the picture slightly different, used a different lens. You might have thought about motivation, working with an individual on a one-to-one basis, that individual consideration. You might have been thinking, oh, they're talking about goals. Yeah, that ability to be coached. You may have looked at role modeling, relationship, communication. All things that you do on a day-to-day basis. But are we using the lens of what does that person need in front of me? Rather than, this is what my session plan says, this is what the long-term athlete development model says I should do. What does that person in front of me need to get better? So model from Till 2019. Yeah. Who, what, how. And these are the decision-making processes that you can go through to try and develop that lens from a biopsychosocial point of view. So who are you coaching? What are you coaching? How are you coaching? And we can break that down a little bit further into the actual session plan. So looking at the learner engagement, learner activity, coaching behaviours, and the session objectives. Okay, so a model that you can use to start exploring deeper interactions. So this is a quote I love from Dan Abrahams, and most of you might have listened to his podcasts, and he talks a lot about the psychosocial. So again, just wanted to challenge your perspective and the lens that you use about thinking, what experience do you want that young person to have before you get to the technical and tactical part? So if you're planning a football session next week, are you going to consider what you want that experience to be before you start thinking about 3v2s? Why we're going to pass wide? Are we considering that experience, that person in front of us, before technical and tactical? And two analogies just to leave you with. Most people will be familiar with this building. For those that aren't, it's the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona. This started to get built in 1892. Still not finished. People started this project and they knew they were never going to see the end of it. It's called cathedral thinking, and I'm fascinated by this thought process at the minute. If we think about GSAL, 3 to 18 years of age is the scope of our school profile. So thinking about a long-term, far-reaching vision. I might never see the end product of that athlete's career. And I hope I don't, because that means at 18 years old, when they leave us, they go on and have a very successful 10, 15, 20-year career outside of school. I'm not going to see the end of that project. And for me, that's a very exciting thing. I'm laying the foundations for other people to build and concrete onto that project. So for you, in your environment, can you pinpoint what is the far-reaching vision for your PE core values and policy? Because at times we're under pressure to finish the product, to think when this young person leaves my environment, they're going to be the finished article. Can we subscribe to cathedral thinking where it's just the start of the project and I'm not going to see the end of it and I'm okay with that? Can I build the foundations that allow this person to grow and develop when they're not with me? Because that's the end product. From a young person at the forefront of the picture to hopefully 40 years' time, they're still engaged with sport, physical activity in some capacity. And have you, within your cathedral thinking, built those foundations? And the last one I want to leave you with comes from the world of forensic science. We're all sat here because a PE teacher, a sports coach, left an indelible mark on us. I guarantee every single person can name the PE teacher that made a difference in their life. Can you be that person? So this comes from forensic science. It's called the Lorcan's principle. And the principle is, between an exchange of two items, a trace will be left. So if you think about a crime scene, okay? I've broken into a house, I've smashed a window to get into the house. On that window, the shards of glass, there's going to be fibres. There might be a fingerprint. How I commit that crime will leave evidence, traits. So if you were to conduct a forensic science analysis of your PE curriculum, your PE program, what evidence, what traces would you leave on those young people, those young athletes, to say, I had an impact? Any questions?
We've got time for 2 questions from the audience. Okay, Lorcan.
They're still thinking, Ken.
We've talked a lot about at our school about our long-term picture and cathedral thinking, and hoping that people who leave the school go on to be physically active for the rest of their life and enjoy themselves. And people say, we can't measure it because of GDPR, we can't contact them. Do you measure it in any way? Do you get in contact with them? Do you survey them to find out what their approach and thoughts are towards physical activity later in life?
We're currently undergoing that process, and you're right, GDPR does limit us in that way. However, other parts of the school, external relations, have a remit to find out information. Generally, are they employed, those types of things, like the university will have. Yeah. So establishments generally have some form of connection. Alumni these days is getting quite big. It's a bit like America, that we are encouraging people to be classed as alumni and engage with university schools once they've left. So there's one element there of alumni. There's another element of external relations where they have statutory requirements in 3, 5, 10 years' time to kind of check in with these people. So you can probably piggyback on the back of those things and say, could you include 1, 2, 3 questions to find that information out that we can use? So you don't have to do it as a PE department yourself. There's probably structures already in place that would allow you to gather some form of information that would help those types of questions.
The kids we have in school, we have a really good well-being program in school, which is curriculum based, times given over, and the kids are surveyed every year. And in that survey, we get data on their clubs, and whether it's a club for recreation or a club for competitive sport. So we know the numbers involved in all of those. We can see drop-off rates, we can see boys or girls. They do something called a people voice, which I'm sure lots of schools have, and we tailor that to find out what they like to do, what they prefer to do. If you don't go to apply, so one of the really important things which kept us really bad was we have girls only fitness sessions because they don't want to be there with boys, particularly at year 8 and 9. So you'll see in the program there might be a spin session, there might be a lifting session, there might be particularly outside of PE curriculum, also in the club. So we do get the data. It does help us really, and it's run by a well-being group which we're part of, which is quite cool.
Fantastic presentation. Loved your use of analogy and storytelling. It's really effective way of getting your idea across. Completely agree with everything you said. One of the issues I can foresee in my mind for the people sat in this room is a lot of the ways independent schools sell themselves is we won the Schools Cup last year, we got this trophy, we got that trophy, which is effectively flipping this the other way around because we know from everything around biological maturation, the relative age effect, that essentially you're just going to choose the early maturity. How would you go about influencing up the chain? If you're an S&C coach or an LTAD specialist who believes everything you just said, but you're in an environment where it's very much results driven, how would you go about influencing change there?
Great question. And we can't get away from that. And I don't want to get away from that. Schools publish their academic qualifications. We're always going to be a performance-based scenario. Universities have gone this way. Universities now sell an experience. They want you to get your degree, but they also sell experience, student union clubs or whatever. So for me, the way I would approach it is, how do you engage parents in that experience of sport and transforming lives? So you want to talk about, we're going to encourage hard work, ethic, overcoming adversity, encouraging an approach to the mental aspect of sport. So yes, winning is great, but that's the outcome. Can we engage you in the process? And the process is about all these things that we can talk about. And I think you'll find most parents, once you have that conversation, that is what they want. They want that process, they want that journey of life skills. Schools like the nice pictures with the cup, but the parents, I think once you start that conversation, will want that. One thing that we've tried this year is on a Saturday morning, when parents are having their refreshments during fixtures, I have a little stall once or twice a term where I will talk about certain topics. We have a captive audience. I don't have to get them to come after school. They're not going to reply to an email of mine. They're already there. How can I engage you? How can I use your time more effectively? That's proved really worthwhile for the topics we've talked about. Mental health, female athlete triad, injury prevention. So how can you capture parents when they're a little bit more relaxed? It's not an open day where you're trying to sell the school. It might be those types of initiatives that you try.
I think as well answered, Kev, and I think we have to, and one of the things I'd love to discuss, because I'm certainly no expert in it, I just have got a bit of experience behind it, but I think we just have to broaden the success criteria. And I think if a parent or a head or a deputy head, if the stakeholders are kids, parents, and managing up for us and towards SLT, you just have to broaden results. So we're results driven. Well, great. Well, results for us are look at the number of people who are participating in non-training, non-competitive sports clubs, because it's just as important as our competitive sports clubs. by the way, look at our kids, they're getting fitter and stronger as a collective group. And we've defined fitter or stronger as whatever Kev decides it's going to be. And then we've gone, look at our success in X, Y, and Z. And I think you have to be brave to manage up to, and it's difficult because, look, we've all worked for difficult heads. We've all worked for challenging SLTs where they put pressure into an X or Y. But that's the thing, we have a clear identity. I think sport, health, sport and activity for us build a sense of belonging to boys and girls. What parent doesn't want a child to be fit and healthy and to thrive? And I just think if we broaden what results should look like, we broaden success, I personally believe the independent school market, which I'm speaking on behalf of, will get better. Because I feel we're not in crisis, but we're not far off. If that's my own opinion.
Okay. Thank you, Lorcan. Thank you, Kev.